One of the fun things about watching old, um, and I'm still not wearing pants, watching old news reports like this is from 2014, is the way that they exist outside of the um, effect of events that have happened since. So this is about oil, and they're sounding the alarm that oil might hit $70 a barrel, $70 US, and what a drop in prices that would be. And trying to figure out what behind such this steep decline. I mean, it's already at $85 a barrel. It's so low. What could cause it to go so low? And he has some talking heads here, and a couple of them are throwing around the thing about supply and demand, and there's something to that, in the sense that it opens up other options for supply and demand can be used as a tool, right? It's to suggest that there's a global free market, and production is determined by random forces and entities and competition. That's a bunch of nonsense, right? um, but certainly when you're in a situation where supply outstrips demand, where demand outstrips supply, or not even demand itself, but capacity outstrips supply so dramatically, it opens up policy options, right? And so there's this one guy here with the glasses there, and he points out that it's got something to do with Iran and Russia and the Saudis. They don't talk about the Great Satan, though, right? They never do. So, the Saudis are angry with the Russians. It's the Saudis that are angry with the Russians, right? They're independent actors entirely, uh, free of any sort of coercion from anybody else. And so they're irritated by the Russian support for the Iranians. So they're essentially cutting supply. They're keeping demand higher than supply to cut prices to hurt the Russians because of Iran. But the real concern is Iran, not Russia. And the host says, well, wait a second here, in his G. Willikers kind of way. I thought that when there's a war in the Middle East, the volatility increases the price of oil. That's what I've been told my whole life. Why is it different this time? And he kind of turtles on him here. All that just to point, I wanted to get to this, kind of simple one-liner. It's real easy, okay? When the Saudis want the Israelis to settle down, they boost the price of oil. So the Americans have to run in and say, hey guys, knock it off there. You kids stop fighting. Because they can do that. But when the Saudis want the Russians to settle down, well, then they cut the price. I am actually surprised, although I will say that I have not been paying particularly close attention over the last few years, that the decrease in oil prices has not emboldened the Israelis. Because I think that if you understand that correctly, you can see that, right? Anyways, that's the real simple line, right? It's just all about different aims, different goals, right? And he stumbles over it here, right? He calls himself a market economist, and he's a little bit weary to get too far into the collapse of the facade, but um, it's not. This is not. It's just, it always makes me laugh that there are actually people that look at the situation and they're like, trying to measure variables and saying, if this happens, then uncertainty implies this, and they get out their little causal charts and they're linear. It's all linear, right? So these like simplistic linear models, if you increase this variable, then this. There are actually people that think that's the way the world works, right? As though the world economy is resolvable to a physics problem, right? When it's really just as simple as, okay, if the bastards want this, they do this, and if the bastards want this, then they do that. And yeah, the conditions are similar, but it's not what people want, right? The motives are different, so you end up with the exact opposite thing happening because that's what people want. Because it has nothing to do with natural conditions or market forces, as though the market is a real thing that exists. It's schizophrenic. These people that think that the market is something that exists outside their minds, that there's a physically real market and it responds to to incentives and forces, and the government can tweak the variables, and then it's as insane as any religious belief, right? That's why we call them market fundamentalists, because they're crazy people. But and even the ones that can say, they'll step back and say, okay, well, there's some, there are some state actors, still can't remove themselves entirely. It's really hard to get market advocates to just admit, okay, a market is basically an Orwellian term for state policy. That's what a market is, right? It's an Orwellian way to describe decisions that are made by bureaucrats at the State Department. And when things happen that they don't want to take responsibility for, then they come up with this schizophrenic theory, and they push all this, like I say, it's linear modeling. It's 2016, and you have people with PhDs using linear models. And you really do. I know the smart ones, they're a little bit past linear modeling, but they still use it. And they argue, it's simplistic, it's just to get it enough. But see, again, they try to use like a Newtonian analogy, as though there are physical laws that define a market as a real thing that exists in reality. It drives me crazy. When it's really just as simple as saying, under this circumstance, the state wants this, so it does this. And under the same circumstance, the state wants this, so it does this. And there's no physical laws, there's no variables, there's no math problem. It's just, tyrants doing what they want. But then that implies that we can change it, which is really what they don't want you to think, right? What they want you to think is that we're at the whim of magic forces and invisible hands. Sorry, there was a magic force there that just came at me. The forces. Dude, what happens if the Koala Central Command joins forces with the market, then the koalas will have market forces to use to control me with. That is a frightening thought. I think I may need to do a bit of a concept record about the Koala Central Command here. To begin with, let's get an announcement out. The Koala Central Command is going to be joining forces with the chief executive of the free market. We believe that the free market has many can act. The CEO of the free market is going to be able to provide us with forces to use to control death to koalas, which through incentivization. I'll have to write this out, but it should be sufficiently absurd. Yeah, the Koala Central Command is going to be collaborating with the free market to utilize its patented system of forces to try and trap its fugitive death to koalas through a system of pulleys and incentives. That's right. But that's. I'm sober. I'm telling you, I'm completely sober. It's if you're gonna blame anything, blame the coffee. All right. But I think we're doing this.